All right, going in to get the supplies I need for the deck stain. My favorite place. Okay, so when you're building a deck, you have a couple options, and most decks are built out of a few different types of materials. One of them is a synthetic decking, which is really nice. These are low maintenance. In terms of cleaning them, you know, you really don't have to do a whole lot to them other than power wash them off, and that's it. They are substantially more expensive. That's the only downside. And then when it comes to natural wood, most decks are made out of green treat wood. Treated wood is basic. It's pine with a treated arsenic chemical that's pushed into the wood. It pound for pound for the amount of money that you're going to spend on it is pretty cheap, and if you need to replace it down the road, it's still substantially cheaper than if you went with a synthetic. But a lot of decks are built out of the green treat. Now, Menards has a really neat thing called cedar tone, which I've come to find is a really nice material. It is green treat. It's treated lumber as well, but with a different dye in it. So the dye color changes on this, and it makes it look more like cedar, which I really like. And it's comparable price to green treat. The other material that a lot of people make out of decks is cedar. Now, cedar is a wonderful material. It looks great, smells good when you work with it. It also has a natural repellent to insects and weathering. It will gray out over time if you don't do anything to it, but it's a really good material to build a deck out of. More expensive than green treat, but it is a beautiful material. I don't think it lasts as long as green treat either. So yeah, so these are pretty much the materials that you have to choose from. Menards does a really nice job of sort of laying out the different types of materials, you know, and you can come in here and really take a look at them. So this is a typical deck wash that I like to use at Menards. Cheap, it does the job. You know, you have multiple different choices here. Some of this gets much more expensive. You know, I believe a lot of it's more expensive just because it has different types of detergents in it. But I tend to just use the real simple one. Sometimes you add a little bleach into it, it'll help it as well. But as you can see, you have quite the selection. I would just recommend, you know, take a look at your deck, how old it is, and how much scum and algae and dirt it has on it. And depending on that variable is what I would go with in terms of deck wash. I mean, this is a cheaper one, but again, like I said, these other ones, they typically do work better, but they are quite a bit more expensive.
So basically, when you're staining a deck, when it's new wood and you've either let it sit or staining it immediately, you can start with either your clears or your toners. When a deck is at the beginning of its life, it is pretty important to use something that isn't super hiding. As decks age, you work your way down to semi-transparents, semi-solids, and solids. Typically, your solid is going to be used at the end of the deck's life, where your semi-transparents and your semi-solids don't hide as much as the solids do. When you're talking about using water-based and oil-based, typically your old school stainers are more prominently using oils. And here in Michigan, when you're staining, you can actually still buy what's considered a solid alkyd oil. Whereas when you go to states that have higher VOC regulations, they have what's called an acrylic oil. And acrylic oils are still soap and water cleanup, but they're not a true oil base, which is used with like paint thinner, mineral spirits, stuff like that. So when you're talking about in Michigan, Cabot in particular, it has different, mostly oils, some water-based options, but when you're talking about putting a brand new deck in, clears and toners is the start. After 3 to 5 years, you move up to your semis, then your semi-solids, and then, like I said, when at the end of the deck's life, before it's either A, replacing deck boards, or B, completely replacing the whole deck, is when you use your solids.
This is what we like to use, a 4-inch brush. Nothing special, but it's enables you to basically get in between the grooves of the boards. Some people do spray the stain on, and if you're doing a clear stain, that's not a big issue. But if you're doing a stain with pigment in it, it's tough to get that to go around the edges. So you either have to spray it and then come back through and brush it, or you could just brush it, and we normally brush it. So anyways, here's a 4-inch brush. Now you want a bigger brush, 5.5 would also work, but that's typically our tool of choice here. Okay, another item you need is paint thinner to clean your brushes with an oil-based stain. It's very important to use this. It will break down the stain and clean your brush in a way that soap and water just won't do with oil. So you do need to purchase paint thinner. You have a few options when it comes to power washers. You can go with more of a basic electric one. These aren't going to push out quite as much gallons per minute. They won't be as they won't be able to sort of clean quite as well as a gas powered one because of the PSI is lower. You know, this one right here is a 1700 PSI. You know, if you do it every once in a while, you don't have a huge deck, it's not a big deal. Now, what I really like, and if I'm doing a big power washing project, I'll either rent or buy, but I really like these Hondas. Matter of fact, I'm looking to buy a Honda, but this power washer right here is really wonderful. I would recommend it. It's gas. It puts out 3,300 PSI. Makes a big difference, but it's also a lot more expensive. So when you're choosing a power washer, just think about how much you use it. You know, it may make more sense to just rent one when you need it. Okay guys, I've had this sitting here for about 15 minutes, and now I'm gonna go ahead and work the brush and just scrub off all that grime and scum and dirt. Just kind of stir it up enough, that way the power washer will be able to come in and spray the rest of that off. Okay, we just finished up power washing the whole deck. Good and clean. I'm gonna let this dry for about 2 days, and then I'm gonna go ahead and come over it with an oil-based stain that will seal it and take care of it for at least 2 to 3 years. Aim's getting ready to stain the deck. Aim, do you have any advice for the beginner?
Just move quickly, don't let your edges dry, and it's very important to work with a clean surface.
Okay, I'm at the third Menards now trying to get this stuff. I've driven about 2 hours. Yeah, just to get an extra gallon. So make sure you get enough, more than enough, to finish your project. That's the lesson learned here. Okay, so as you can see, the deck, it actually just rained this morning, but you can see how it beads up on there, and that I really feel like the oil base stain helps to make that look, and it helps to make it so it doesn't absorb into the deck. But as you can see, we've got it all stained. Got the furniture back on it. Beautiful morning. Oh, there's the karaoke station. But yeah, it really beads up well, like a nicely waxed car, basically. So you can see this is the newer part of the deck, and then over on the side over here we had, it's not beating up as much because that's older wood. You can actually see the difference right there. The side here we never replaced. That's probably like 6 or 7 years old, and then the new deck is beating up because it's not absorbing into it. But I think we may try to hit that with another coat, just to kind of get it to beat up a little more. But in general, it really turned out well.